How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Welcome, one and all. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Glad to have you with me. Don't forget to text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the live stream, the show notes, and so much more. So now I'm going to upset some of you. Because I am friends with people I very often disagree with. The whole idea that I can only be friends with people who agree with me politically is anathema to me. Jesus said, love your neighbors, not your neighbors who share your politics with you. And I am friends with the Democrats. I'm friends with liberals. Got a lot of progressives who hate my guts. I got some Trump supporters who hate my guts. I got one of them coming after me right now on social media. I don't care what your politics are. If I can be friends with you, I want to be friends with you. We are, all of us, every single person on planet Earth made in the image and likeness of God. We should work to try to find the reflection of God in the other person. Sometimes we can't. There are some people I just don't like. But there are people you don't like that I like. And I'm just warning you here. And I hate to even set the stage that way, but I know the reaction it will provoke when I say what I'm about to say for some of you. I'm friends with Ana Navarro from The View. We worked at CNN together. I know her husband. I like her husband. I knew her husband before they were married. We don't see eye to eye on very much, but she is a deeply funny person, and she has been a real prayer warrior for my wife and a booster for my wife in her fight for cancer, and we agree to disagree and don't talk politics. But I like Anna. She makes me laugh, and I will occasionally disagree with her on this program and play the clips where we disagree. But I got to play a clip where every single one of you needs to hear Ana Navarro today. She is a friend. Her background is her family is from Central America. She is nominally a Republican. She's a John McCain fan, but she's a nominally Republican because the Republicans back in the day were the ones who fought the commies. She's progressive socially. She obviously hates Donald Trump. I don't think she would consider herself part of this Republican Party. I think she said as much these days. But you need to hear this and just listen and you'll understand why. This is from The View yesterday.
Your question, who voted for this? Mm-hmm. The people in South Florida, the Venezuelan community, the Cuban American community, the Nicaraguan American community voted for this. And for us, this is a very, very happy day when we see a dictator who has been part of oppressing and abusing the Venezuelan people for 25 years. When we see him in handcuffs and held to some sort of accountability, it brought me into tears. It brought me great joy. And, I live in South Florida.
But are you okay with the way that it was done?
But you can, I think both things can be true.
Okay.
I think you can criticize and ask questions and have concerns about the way it was done and what this means in the future.
Right.
And I think you can still celebrate that this murderous, corrupt, sadistic son of a is out of Venezuela.
Yeah.
Because he has... I think there's 8 million Venezuelan exiles all over the world. People have fled from this man's tyrannical rule. So for me...
For her, she's happy. She's someone who is deeply plugged into that community in ways you or I are not. And she's happy Donald Trump got rid of Maduro. She doesn't like Trump. She's happy with this. And I think you should be too, for all the reasons she said, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Josh Gottheimer, who is the Democratic congressman from New Jersey, struck, I think, the perfect told, he and John Fetterman, that Maduro is a murderous, tyrannical dictator who needed to be ousted. We can argue about what comes next and how it happened and whether or not Congress should have been told, but he needed to go, and now he's gone, and good riddance. That's from a Democrat. Most Democrats out there, their view is that this is bad, that Donald Trump shouldn't have done this. Navarro completely changed the conversation around that table with Whoopi Goldberg and Sonny What's-Her-Name and the rest of them. But one of the things she said, too, is we can argue and ask questions about how they did it and what comes next. What comes next? I have a suspicion that the 8 million Venezuelan exiles, many of whom were celebrating in the streets on Sunday, they're going to be sorely disappointed. I think Anna is ultimately going to be disappointed. I think the conventional wisdom of a lot of the people who study Venezuela is right. If you read my show notes today, there is a tweet I embedded from Ryan Saavedra, who essentially is summarizing a story in the New York Times. And I want to read for you this interesting details for the New York Times on why the Trump administration decided not to back Maria Corina Machado as Nicolas Maduro's replacement. It had nothing to do with her winning the Nobel Peace Prize, unlike what some people were claiming. Trump was persuaded by arguments from senior officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said if the United States tried to back the opposition, it would destabilize the country and require a more robust military presence. A CIA intelligence analysis reflected the view. Senior U.S. officials had grown frustrated with her assessments of Maduro's strength, feeling that she provided inaccurate reports. They grew skeptical of her ability to seize power. Richard Grenell, Trump's envoy, met with Machado's representatives and asked them to arrange an in-person meeting with Machado in Caracas and for a list of political prisoners they wanted liberated, but the in-person meeting never happened. Machado, despite promises that the Americans would protect her, refused to meet with Grenell. Over time, the relationship deteriorated. Machado and her team ignored the request for a list of political prisoners. Grenell repeatedly pressed Machado to outline her plan for putting her surrogate candidate, Mundo Gonzalez, into office after she was barred from running. He grew frustrated when she expressed no concrete idea on how to do it. Machado was upset Grenell did not more forcefully denounce Maduro as illegitimate. Categorical rejection of any talks or contact with Maduro's government had been a bedrock of Machado's political strategy. It crippled her ability to broaden her coalition. Machado's unequivocal support of sanctions destroyed her relationships with Venezuela's business elite. Machado's economic advisors have argued that every dollar going into Venezuela was a dollar for Maduro, a radical stance that alienated Venezuela's civil society working to improve living conditions. Machado's team and allies in exile took to social media to attack and discredit political figures whose work deviated from their own views. Orlando Perez, a professor of political science at the University of North Texas in Dallas, said of Machado and her allies, quote, "They don't have the levers of power. They don't have the institutions. And without us over assistance, they're not going to get back into power in Venezuela." Here's the reality. Here is the truth. The reality is Venezuela per capita has, I think this is true, more generals in the Venezuelan military per capita than any other country on the planet. And those generals, each of them controls a lever of economic power and political power. And they're tied in to the Hugo Chavez Maduro regime. It's going to be easier to co-opt them than replace them. Oil companies on background have said that they actually thought that Maduro's vice president, the acting president now, is someone they could do business with. How do you put in power a group of people who are exiles who don't even agree with each other on everything? And that's part of the issue, too, is that the the people of the United States, they don't actually, the people of Venezuela, they don't actually all agree with each other. Jeb Bush, my friend Martha just texted me and said, he's out, not exactly any love lost between him and Donald Trump, but he's out singing Trump's praises for what he did. And Jeb Bush would love to see Machado come to power, but at the same time also understands that Maduro being brought to justice is the first step along the way. I have this sense, my gut is that we're not going to see a lot of change, at least overnight. We're not going to see a major evolution in what's happening in Venezuela because the Chavista regime there is too entrenched into the workings of society. And so what we have to do is apply pressure as best we can to co-opt them to our side away from China, Russia, and Iran. We, on our way out, destroyed the parts of the Iranian economy that have entrenched within Venezuela. Did you know, I mentioned this yesterday. So I mentioned yesterday Margarita Island, which when I was in college law school, there was like a Maxim magazine report on this place that a lot of European men, it was their destination of choice because the island was covered in cocaine and prostitutes and golf. And you could go down there and play golf for cheaper than most places in Europe. And you could be partnered essentially with prostitutes for the week and cocaine for cheap. And a lot of European men back in the early 2000s, Margaret Island became code for your husband's going to cheat on you in Venezuela. And women in Europe became opposed to men going to golf vacations in Venezuela. And a buddy of mine said, you know what? A buddy of mine and some of his friends spent spring break down there in the early 2000s. And like, I know what they were getting into. So over time, Chavez looked at this Margarita Island, which was this big golf resort that a ton of European men mostly, and apparently American college men, were going to, realized it was a bastion of Western decadence. Not only did he take it over and destroy the golf course, he let Iran set up shop. So the Iranians have controlled an island off the coast of Venezuela. And they've been building drones for the Russians and for the Venezuelans. And we blew it up on our way out the other night. The Iranians and Hezbollah set up shop. The Chinese have a deal with the Venezuelans for the rare earth minerals in Venezuela as well as the oil. Now, only about 4% of China's oil comes from Venezuela, but about 95% of Cuba's oil comes from Venezuela. That's why Maduro was surrounded by Cuban bodyguards. We have the potential to co-opt this regime. We're probably not going to change the regime. We're probably not going to see the supporters of democracy come to power. We're probably going to have an entrenched socialist regime that has to make kissy face with us because we can shut off their oil supplies and we can shut off their economy. And I'm fine with that right now. I just don't know that people like Ana Navarro are going to be fine. They want change. They want the Venezuelan people who are in exile to be able to go home, and I don't know that they can go home. Marco Rubio is going to have to work on that. I trust Rubio to understand the situation, but I think Rubio also understands that you're not going to get bold reform overnight in Venezuela. The existing regime is too entrenched in the economy, too entrenched in the powers of civil justice, too entrenched in the military, too entrenched in propping up narco-terrorists. We've got our work cut out for us, and Congress hasn't approved military intervention. So we can't engage the military. Even Donald Trump, who's willing to flaunt a lot of norms, is not willing to try to risk a military venture in Venezuela without some support from Congress. And in fact, you should know there actually is some effort by Democrats and Republicans in the Senate to give Trump some military leeway now that Maduro is gone. We'll see if this happens. I hope it does. Change is possible, but it's going to come very slow in Venezuela, I suspect, much slower than many of us probably thought on Saturday and Sunday when we saw this happen. Change is coming, but it's going to be much slower than I think a lot of people want. But in that slowness, you're not going to get the chaos that came out of places like Iraq, and that's a good thing.
Y'all, I'm not a New Year's resolution guy. I never have been, but I have resolved, I guess you could say, before the New Year's to just drink more water. It's good for you. And I buy bottled water for the office, but I finally broke down and I bought a Cove Pure. So if you don't know what it is, it's an incredible machine. It's got technology that's certified to remove 99.9% of contaminants for the water. It gets rid of PFAs, microplastics, pharmaceutical residue, fluoride. It gets everything removed. It's the purest water you can get, and you just pour tap water in the back and let the filters do the work, and it just works. When I used it for the first time, I didn't realize you could heat up the water. You can chill the water. You can just have regular tap water at room temperature, and it just works with the push of a button. It sits right on the countertop. Didn't have to call a plumber. It makes it really easy. Cove Pure is so easy to get pure water with the push of a button. Do your New Year's resolution, improve your health with real clean water. Right now, you can get $200 off for a limited time at covepure.com/Eric. That's COVEPURE, covepure.com/Eric, ERICK.
Greetings, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. Ryan Anderson, who is the president of the Ethics Public Policy Center in Washington, D.C., points out that there's actually really strong polling from the American public that they do not support taxpayer funding for abortion, that they support the Hyde Amendment. And he is pushing back on the president, suggesting Republicans need to compromise on the Hyde Amendment. That would, you want to rally as many Republicans as possible to get them to show up in November, and I just don't think that you're going to get them there if they are that upset about, for example, the Hyde Amendment. So anyway, we got to move on to other stuff. I do want you to know the president is claiming he's announcing a probe into California. He says it is much more corrupt than even Minnesota. Gavin Newsom, of course, is throwing punches, claiming that this is not so. California, however, has faced some real scrutiny. A recent state auditor report I'm reading right now uncovered $1.5 billion in improper unemployment payments during 2023 and 2024, including over $500 million in what appears to be fraud. And the Republicans are calling for audits and investigations. And the whole thing, I think, is probably going to, well, blow up in interesting ways in the state of California. So we will see how this all begins to play out there. Now, let me tell you about my bank, Old Glory Bank. So I did not have it. Yeah, I've had some really – I've had enough – put it to you this way. I've had good enough runs at the craps table this last year that I got to actually report it on my taxes. But, man, I was wiped out the weekend before Christmas. I had some money back, not as much as I usually do. But I was able to deposit it at Old Glory Bank, even though they're an online bank. How? Because I use my app. And you can deposit cash. It generates a QR code. There are 88,000 retail locations around the country where I can take the cash up to $1,000, which I did not have that much. And they scan the QR code. You give it to the register attendant, and away you go. The cashier. You give the money to the cashier, and it gets deposited pretty instantaneously into your account once they click the QR code on your app. That's how innovative Old Glory Bank is. They are highly innovative. I had a very prominent online bank for a while, and I got frustrated because I couldn't do that, but I can with Old Glory Bank. OldGloryBank.com/Eric. Go check them out today. By conservatives for conservatives, but a bank committed to freedom and great innovation. They're great for businesses. If you need a business checking account, business savings account, they do mortgages, they do CDs, custodial accounts for your kids. OldGloryBank.com/Eric. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425, should you wish to be on the program. I want to say it was Beckett Adams, who's a writer, I think with the Washington Examiner. Follow him on Twitter. In any event, a wise man once said, I'll put it that way. A wise man once said that the experts are dead. It was a suicide. Now, I feel compelled to point out that someone is going to send me hate mail making light of suicide because of tragedy in their own family and trauma, and I apologize if it triggers you, but just hear my point. The expert class decided to commit suicide in the United States. How many of you have in the last 72 hours heard that Donald Trump's incursion into Venezuela is going to increase the likelihood that Russia and China decide they can take territory at will? Because I've seen this all over social media. Tom Nichols, a man who wrote a book about the death of expertise and the need for experts, has been making this claim among others. And I got to tell you, it's not a smart point. Let me read for you. This is not exactly a smart person, but despite that, has a column in the New York Times where progressives lap up everything she writes. This is Michelle Goldberg. Despite early appearances, the Trump administration's abduction of President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela doesn't seem to be a regime change operation. After all, America's leaving the regime, now headed by Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, in power. As of Monday, all of Venezuela's ruling officials, aside from Maduro, remain in their posts, including Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez and Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello, who controls the police and was known as one of Maduro's most fearsome enforcers. It's very odd historically to see something like this, says Javier Corrales, a professor of Amherst and author of Autocracy Rising, How Venezuela Transitioned to Authoritarianism, to see that you get rid of the leader, but the regime stays in place. But for Donald Trump, the preservation of something close to the status quo makes sense, given his goal is extortion, not political transformation. Rather than the moralistic imperialism of George W. Bush, Trump's foreign policy is imperialistic gangsterism. As one administration official put it to me, there's something refreshing about Trump saying, yeah, we're taking back the oil. She's got a point to a degree, only to a limited degree. But also, she wants to claim that this is the Trump mafioso. And I got to say, if you read my opening of my show notes, you know I'm not a fan of how Stephen Miller's handling himself. But there's something else going on here as well. The informed sensibilities of the elite and the expert class, they've gotten kind of dumb. See, this isn't about Donald Trump's mafia tactics. It's about the restoration of American influence in the Western Hemisphere. I'm a big fan of George W. Bush. I think he's a decent man. I think he was a good president. And many of you who viscerally react when I say that were cheering him on when I was willing to criticize him when he was president. But he was a good man. But he was so focused on the Middle East. China used that distraction to build up power in South and Central America. We abandoned the Monroe Doctrine, and Trump is reasserting it, and it's a good thing. But the experts don't want to talk about the Monroe Doctrine, or now the Donroe Doctrine, as Trump's calling it. The Romans, when in power, had a view of the Mediterranean that it was theirs. Mare Nostrum, our sea. The Roman Empire had a view that they controlled the Mediterranean, and in fact they did. If you look at the Mediterranean Sea, To the south is Africa. To the north is Europe. To the west is through the Straits of Gibraltar, the Atlantic. To the east is the Middle East, the Levant. Rome controlled it all. From the United Kingdom down the Nile Valley in Egypt, from Morocco to the Sinai, up to Aleppo, around the Turkish Peninsula, across the Bosporus. Every bit of it was controlled by Rome. And Rome had an idea that the Mediterranean was theirs. No empire, once Carthage fell and Egypt was captured, no empire could control Rome's navigational routes in its territory. James Monroe, one-time Secretary of State, President of the United States, articulated the Monroe Doctrine, getting the European colonial powers out of the Western Hemisphere. And you know who was a big supporter of it at the time, interestingly enough? Great Britain. As the British Empire was crumbling in the Western Hemisphere, Britain loved the idea of getting all the other European powers out of the Western Hemisphere. Spain's bank was essentially in South America. Or was it in Bolivia, I think, Bolivia, Ecuador, maybe not Ecuador. Maybe it was Ecuador. Have massive mountain of silver that the Spanish used to fund the Spanish Empire. And Monroe wanted them out, and we kind of let Teddy Roosevelt, of course, carried a big stick, pushed the European powers out. We had the Spanish-American War, pushed Spain out. And then we kind of let it slip, and we got more focused on the whole world than the Western Hemisphere. And when Bush came to power, given what happened on 9/11, he was much more focused on destroying al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein, and we got distracted, and China started slipping into South America. China started buying up rare earth minerals and mines, and then has collaborated with the Venezuelans, among others. And Trump says nope. And now he controls the major supplies of oil in the world. Trump does. We do, by proxy, through Trump. It's a good thing, by the way. Oil prices aren't going to come down tremendously at first, but they have the potential to come down over time. And that helps offset the cost of tariffs. That stabilizes the economy. Cheaper energy means prices can come down even with the tariffs. It's good, sound economic policy by the Trump administration. So on my call with Mark Halperin this morning, talking about how there actually is a lot of times the Trump administration seems to be very scattershot. They don't really seem to have a coherent whole in their policies. But in this, they do. The Trump administration has understood the entire time, if you bring oil prices down, food prices come down, your pocket feels a lot heavier with more money in it, and that's a good thing. And controlling Venezuelan oil, well, it's heavy oil. It's good, heavy crude, and Texas and Louisiana have the refinery capacity to refine it. But you don't get that from the experts, do you? You get from the experts that Donald Trump going into Venezuela makes it easier for Russia to, invade Ukraine. They hadn't done that apparently. Trump going into Venezuela makes it easier for China to go into Taiwan. What? You mean they didn't surround them last week? The suicide of the experts in this country, and let's be clear, we need experts. We need professionals who are really good at their jobs. You need a lawyer. A lawyer is an expert in the law. You need a pilot. Pilot's an expert at flying a plane. And we need people who are experts in their field to go on television to tell us what's happening. But at CNN, they got Jeffrey Tubin still. He's their Supreme Court legal expert. They brought him back after exposing himself on a Zoom call with colleagues. They brought him back. They actually censored Mary Catherine Ham, a female commentator at CNN who expressed discomfort with having Jeffrey Tubin on TV doing God knows what with his hands under the desk. And he hates Republicans. He hates the conservatives on the Supreme Court. And all of his expertise is designed to delegitimize the people he dislikes. They have Andrew McCabe at CNN. Andrew McCabe of the Russiagate fame and the FBI, a Trump hater at CNN. And he's who's going to advise you on the goings-on and happenstance of the FBI and the law and law enforcement activities. What Republican wants to listen to CNN? They chose partisan progressives as experts. They didn't choose experts. And by the way, the sabotage and suicide of the experts came a lot of it during COVID, where a lot of them, and I myself was willing at first to trust a lot of these experts with COVID, and they wound up getting a lot of stuff wrong. And some of the good ones had the expertise to understand that with experts, when the data changes, you change your mind. But a lot of them, Dr. Fauci, refused to change his mind and engaged in cover-up about reality, which further caused the suicide of the expert class. They chose to discredit themselves. And when it comes to Venezuela, we didn't actually go in, and Michelle Goldberg is willing to at least acknowledge this point. We didn't go in and do regime change. The regime is still in place. All we did was take out Maduro, who had been indicted in federal court in the United States, and we pulled him out of there and forced him to go through his arraignment and put him in jail. I saw one expert the other day say, this could enable Vladimir Putin to go assassinate Zelensky. This man is someone, I can't remember which one it was, but he's a commentator who has appeared on ABC News and CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. And he said Trump capturing Maduro could embolden Putin to try to go in and capture or assassinate Zelensky. He has already tried, you idiot. He's already tried it. He's already invaded. The idea that Donald Trump doing this will somehow inspire China, no, the hell it won't. It might deter China because the Venezuelans used Chinese technology to try to deter our aircrafts, and it failed. The Chinese and the Russian and the Iranian air support and air detection systems and aircraft detection systems and anti-aircraft systems, they all failed against the might of the American military. It should give the Chinese pause in trying to go into Taiwan, where we've been stockpiling our latest and greatest technologies. Do you know one of the things the Trump administration has done? The Trump administration in the northern islands of the Philippines, they have been stockpiling anti-aircraft, anti-ship missiles in the Luzon Straits. Why? Because that's as close as you can get to Taiwan without it being Taiwan. We're arming the northern Philippine Islands to go after Chinese ships if the Chinese dare try to surround Taiwan, which they did last week in a military training operation. The idea that what we did will embolden China or Russia, it should scare the hell out of them, frankly. Neither the Chinese nor the Russians have the capability to be able to do what we did to extract Maduro from Venezuela in the middle of the night, in the fog, in helicopters. They're going to have to rethink things. They really did think, they thought that we are tired, we are lazy, and our technology is no longer up to snuff, and we pulled off what they can't pull off. The experts aren't telling you that. The experts are saying we gave them a permission slip. We didn't give them a permission slip. They were doing this stuff already, and yet the experts want you to believe it because they hate Donald Trump. And the experts are gearing on television. The experts gear all of their commentary towards hating Donald Trump and the Republicans. The Republicans are illegitimate. It's like the coverage of the Somali fraud scandal. Because it originated in right-wing media, it is not worthy of coverage. Donald Trump did something really good. It is not worthy of coverage. It must be delegitimized. God forbid we give him credit for what he did. But he did great stuff. The experts, we need experts. We need people who are knowledgeable on issues, but too many of our experts aren't real experts. They're partisan progressives who hate Donald Trump, and their expertise is shaded by that. They make it up as they go along, and they use big words to confuse us, to make it sound like they're experts. They're not experts. They're partisan hacks. The experts all committed suicide because they didn't want to be experts. They wanted to be political pundits who hate Republicans, and the rest of us tune them out. And that's now why you have so many people on the right listening to nut jobs like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Alex Jones, because the people they should listen to, the experts, committed suicide, said, we don't want to deal with the Republicans. We just want to hate Trump. And their expertise went in the trash. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. I put in a clip in the show notes, and I myself did them again today. Although they're partly behind the paywall, you should subscribe. Text Eric to 33777. There's a clip from Harry Itten, and he's talking about the polling and that most Americans, they're not happy. And the reason most Americans aren't happy is because it's overwhelmingly like 99% of Democrats opposed going into Venezuela. A plurality of independents were fine with it. Republicans overwhelmingly fine with it, but it is like 42%. Scott Jennings on CNN has pointed out to Jake Tapper that if Donald Trump cured cancer, it would only get about 42% support because Democrats are so opposed to Donald Trump. But it was like, I don't see the logic in this given the polling. You cannot govern with polls. I realize that's Harry's job, and I got a great deal of respect for Harry. I like the guy tremendously. Don't know him, but really like him. But the job of a poll for a politician is to tell you how to message what you want to do to convince people. If you're sticking your finger in the air to say, what do the American people want me to do? Let's take a poll. You're going to be a terribly unpopular leader. Instead, you decide what you want to do, and then you take a poll to figure out how to message what you're doing. And Trump hasn't done that. He cut straight to doing it as opposed to making the case for it. I think he should have made the case, but he did it. And I think history will judge it was a great move. He wasn't guided by polls. He was guided by a strategy. And the strategy was to reassert American dominance in the Western Hemisphere and push Iran, Russia, and China out of the Western Hemisphere. And that is a good play. Every single American can thank Donald Trump for doing that. Every single American should thank Donald Trump for doing that. And I know you Democrats won't. You Democrats will just be absolutely insistent that orange man bad, he can do no good. And yet he has done a lot of good by pushing Maduro out and crippling that regime down there. They didn't rush in and do regime change. You know, there's a point to be made here, and this is a fundamental point. Venezuela was a functioning democracy less than 25 years ago. Most of the people who live there still remember what it was like to have a functioning non-dictatorial democracy. And as a result, we're going to allow the Venezuelans to put it back together if they can, even with this present regime. We have an opportunity. We should play it out. But this was good, Donald Trump, for doing this. It was good for him doing this. Now, it would be good for you to reach out to Swiss America. Why? Because they've been warning people about a secret war on cash. You know, they're the trusted leader in precious metals in this country, and I've used them to add precious metals to my portfolio. You can do so as well. But not only that, you can get from them their secret war on cash report. What is the secret war on cash? Well, very simply put, the government is trying, along with banks and others, to steer you towards credit card and debit card purchases so the government can monitor what you're doing. Swiss America has a whole report on this secret war on cash. You can get it for free by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency, and it's spreading. So read the secret war on cash report completely free. Just mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK. Follow that link, put in your information, get the report for free. Message and data rates may apply.